that Delos is the vacation of the future today. At Delos, you get your choice of the vacation you want. There's Medieval World, Roman World, and of course, Westworld. Boy, have we got a vacation for you.
Hello there, and welcome once again to USR1 Retro Goes to the Movies. Thank you very much for joining me for this movie review episode where I take a look at possibly one of my favourite films ever, and it is, of course, Westworld, starring Brynner, James Brolin and Richard Benjamin. Now, the story concerns a theme park of the future run by the Delos Corporation with 3 segments: Westworld, Roman World and Medievalworld, and all the guests are basically charged $1,000 a day for the pleasure of either shooting, slicing, or having lots of sex with robots. Yeah. Now, 2 of the guests are James Brolin and Richard Benjamin, who play 2 friends who go to this expensive theme park of the future for a little fun and relaxation. They go to Westworld, where they come across the gunslinger played by Brynner, who, as it happens, is wearing the same outfit he wore in The Magnificent Seven in 1962, I can't remember the exact year that one came out, but yeah, they come across him a few times, and then suddenly the park starts to go haywire with the people in charge losing control of the robots. They start murdering guests, and all chaos ensues. Now, if this sounds a little bit familiar, you might remember a little film from 1993, also written by Michael Crichton, called Jurassic Park and directed by Steven Spielberg, which is basically along the same premise, but with dinosaurs instead of robots on a much bigger scale. And also, to me anyway, it influenced another film from 1984, also with a robot who basically ends up stalking one particular person, and that is the Terminator. But we'll get onto that in just a moment. Now, I first watched Westworld back, I think it was about the mid-90s, when they were playing some cracking films instead of the same films over and over and over and over again ad infinitum. I mean, they played Logan's Run, they played Outland, and then they played Westworld. After watching the trailer when it came on telly, I was like, yeah, that looks interesting. Set the video recorder to record, watched it back the following day, and it blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. It was tense where it needed to be. It was fun where it needed to be. There was a nice touch of humour as well where it needed to be. And I think that's a credit to writer-director Michael Crichton, who basically, this was his directorial debut. And for a directorial debut, it's very strong. It's a very, very strong debut indeed. As I say, it's tense, especially at the very end when the only person left in the park is Richard Benjamin, and he's being relentlessly pursued by the gunslinger. after basically he shoots James Brolin. See, there's something in the guns where if it's aimed at someone whose body temperature is high, it won't fire because it registers them as a human. If it is put in front of a cold body, then it will fire because it registers them as a robot. And as I say, when the park malfunctions, basically the guns malfunction as well, and they start being able to be shot at humans and that. So when he kills James Brolin, basically then begins a relentless pursuit of Richard Benjamin, and that's when it turns into Terminator-style territory. And that's, as I say, that's where, for me, it kind of influences the Terminator, where you've got a robot mercilessly pursuing one person, you know. And when you watch the Terminator, you can definitely see like a kind of influence of Westworld, even though there was like the story of the idea coming to James Cameron while he was having a fever dream while making Piranha 2 because he wasn't well at the time. And I still think there is a touch of Westworld in that film as well, with Relentless Pursuit. But I mean, overall, I think the performances in Westworld are second to none. You know, really, really well acted. I mean, there's even a guest role for Major Barrett Roddenberry, wife of Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry, and she plays the owner of a hotel/saloon, and there's a highly comedic scene of a huge fight breaking out while Richard Benjamin and James Brolin are playing cards, and they decide they're not going to get in on the fight, they just want to continue playing cards. But then they're brought into it when one of the robots is thrown through the table, and they just get into it and start having a massive punch up while drinking the whiskey and that. It's a highly comical scene. It's very, very funny. It's probably one of the best scenes in the whole film. As is when the gunslinger returns after the first shooting, and he corners James Brolin in the hotel room, and then you've got Richard Benjamin outside. He's just finished in the bath. He's got his gun on him, and he hears like the commotion inside. He kicks the door in, and as he's trying to fire at the gunslinger, some of his bullets are flying wayward and that, and then he ends up hitting the gunslinger a few times, and he flies out the window, like crashes through the window and hits the floors. It's a great scene, absolutely great scene, and well done as well. And then the following scene that comes after it is where he's in jail. And they say, oh yeah, he's going to get hung for murder and that, even though it was self-defense. James Brolin hatches this elaborate plan to, well, not elaborate, but a simple plan to bust him out of jail, you know, where basically he ends up blowing part of the wall away with a bit of dynamite of like the jail, frees his friend, and then shoots the sheriff, and then they ride off. And then it's round about then that things start taking a bit of a turn, with like failures in the park and that are like growing even more. But I think possibly one of the best performances in the whole film, and I love Yul Brynner, I really do. I think he was one of the best actors. You know, for me, he's up there with like Steve McQueen and John Wayne and like the classic actors, you know, from like the 50s up to like the 80s and that. He's definitely up there with like the greats. Even though I've heard stories that he didn't get on with like Steve McQueen on the set of the Magnificent Seven and that. But in this, playing the robotic gunslinger, he's great, absolutely great, and I think he's one of the highlights of the film. He really is. But I think one of the other highlights is just the idea of having a whole theme park based around doing whatever the hell you want, and there's no repercussions. You know, like going to Medievalworld and having like sword fights with like the Black Knight and other people, and engaging in a bit of debauchery, you know. And then you've got Westworld, where you can rob a bank, you can break people out of jail, you can start bar fights, and again, debauchery and that. But it's things like being a Western outlaw, and there's no repercussions for it. You know, basically fulfilling your wildest fantasies, like Western fantasies. You know, it's a great idea. It is a great idea for a film. I mean, the series that came a few years ago, I think I watched a couple of episodes, and I couldn't really get into it. It wasn't my cup of tea, and I know that probably that's gonna piss off a few people, but I don't know. I just didn't really get on with it, you know. The film sequel, Future World, it's not a film that I'd return to time and time again. I mean, I've got the Blu-ray, and I've got Westworld on Blu-ray. But I think with Future World, it's not as good as Westworld. I think Westworld set the benchmark, you know, for that kind of film, and I think Future World, it's so far from that market, it's unbelievable. I mean, the cast is still pretty good. I mean, Brynner returns as the gunslinger, but you've got Blythe Danner and you've got Peter Fonda. And basically there's this whole thing of the Delos corporations basically wanting to replace world leaders with robots that they can basically take over. It's a ho-hum story that still has the theme park set, you know, but it just wasn't a good film. This is a fantastic film. If you haven't seen it, you know, I mean, obviously there has been spoilers in this, you know, but if you haven't seen it, I highly suggest you watch it. You know, I mean, I'm going to put a spoiler warning at the beginning of the video anyway. But yeah, definitely get it watched. I mean, I even think that this was one of the first films, if not the first film, to have digital manipulation with like certain bits and pieces, because there's one bit in Medievalworld where Benjamin's trying to get away from Brynner, and they end up in Medievalworld, and you see part, like some shots from the gunslinger's point of view, and it's all like digital and that, and he can see like the body heat of what's his name again in this? Peter Martin. Richard Benjamin's name, and it's Peter Martin. He can see the body heat of Peter Martin, and then as he moves closer to like flames of a torch, he kind of focuses more on the torch, and Martin blends in with the heat from the torch, so he can't be found on that. As I say, it's one of the early uses of like digital manipulation, I suppose, or digital photography or something. But it's such a well done effect. I mean, it's still pretty good now. You know, I mean, what, 50 years later? Yeah, 50 years later, or 51 years later, because it's 51 this year, because I think it was like 73 that it came out. Let's have a look. Yeah, 1973. So, yeah, 51 years later this year. And the thing is, it's as I say, it's still a thrilling film to watch. It really is. And it's a film that's crying out for a 4K remaster with the Beyond Westworld documentary that was released as a separate DVD when the film first came out on disc. You know, so if you want the documentary, you've got to buy separately. No. It needs to be included with the release. Any release, it needs to be released with it. You know, and if it comes out on 4K with, like, you know, some cracking extras and that documentary, then I would pick it up like that. You know, because I've got the first Blu-ray release of the film. And it's probably one of my favourite Blu-rays. You know, and and it always will be. I mean, this is definitely one of my favourite Laserdiscs. You know, the print on it is pretty good. There is some dirt in there. But if you've got a Laserdisc player, I can't think of a better version to have. It's the same with if you've got a Blu-ray player, pick it up on Blu-ray. You know, it's a great film, absolutely great film, and I can't recommend it highly enough. As I say, for a directorial debut of Michael Crichton, you know, it's a great debut, and it still holds up. It really does still hold up even now. You know, get it watched. Definitely get it watched if you haven't seen it. Don't bother with the sequel unless you really want to, you know, but just stick with the original. That's it for this episode of USR1 Retro Goes to the Movies. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it's made you want to check the film out, you know, because it's a film that you know, as I say, it was the blueprint for Jurassic Park, and in my eyes, it was partially the blueprint for the Terminator as well. In my eyes, you know. I mean, I know, as I say, Cameron had that fever dream of like the machine rising from the fire and going after, you know, blah, blah, blah. And obviously the thing with like Harlan Ellison and that as well. But I do believe that was a blueprint for the Terminator, easily. But yeah, definitely pick it up if you fancy watching it. It's well worth a watch, and it's only an hour and a half, so it's quite short. But it packs a lot of stuff in, and you know, it has the bonus of having a mock commercial at the beginning to explain what Delos is. You know, it's not like many modern films where there's loads and loads of exposition, and by the time they tell you the story, you can't be arsed with it no more. You know, this basically, it does it condensed minute and a half or 2 minute commercial. You know, that's all you need, and then it gets into the film. You know, so, but yeah. Anyway, sorry, I'm waffling on. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I have talking about it, and I hope, as I say, it's inspired you to watch the film. So until the next episode of USR1 Retro or USR1 Retro Goes to the Movies, I just want to say thank you for watching. Take care, look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video. So until then, this is USR1 Retro saying goodbye for now.